By 1721, the Maya had abandoned Sakbalan. The jungle didn't waste time. It swallowed the place whole, with roots tearing into walls and vines smothering plazas. The city didn't just disappear, it got eaten alive. For the next 300 years, Sakbalan turned into more of a myth than a memory. A name archaeologists and explorers would whisper, secretly hoping to find it one day. Plenty of expeditions tried to track it down, but the rainforest is sneaky. Every path looks identical, maps fall apart in the humidity, and even GPS can't cut through the thick green ceiling. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, except the haystack was alive, covered in thorns, and yeah, crawling with jaguars that would happily make you lunch. So how did the scientists crack the mystery? One word: a letter from the 17th century. The letter by Diego de Ribas described all the routes, rivers, and trails leading to Sakbalan. It showed in every detail the journey of the soldiers who walked 4 days to the Lakuntun River after leaving Sakbalan. Then they sailed for 2 days into Guatemala. This was already detailed enough, but the scientists needed to pinpoint the exact location with geographic information systems. They took into account vegetation layers and how much each person was carrying to map an approximate range where Sakbalan should be. They fed this information to GIS and calculated where the city should be. And bingo, it worked. Archaeologists traveled through the jungle and found stone temples rising like broken teeth from the earth. There were also some tools and ceramics, and a Spanish church right in the middle of the ruins. The discovery isn't just about cool ruins, it rewrites history. For decades, people assumed the Lacandons simply scattered after Lakamtun fell, but Sakbalan proves they regrouped, fought, and preserved their culture for over a century more. It's like discovering the final chapter of a book we thought ended too soon. There's also irony here. The Spanish friar who revealed Sakbalan helped doom it. Yet his letter, centuries later, also helped save its memory. Today, the ruins sit inside a biosphere reserve, protected by the same jungle that once hid them. Tourists can't just waltz in. It's raw, tangled, alive. The city breathes again, but on its own terms. Scientists just uncovered another lost city, buried under the thick jungles of Mexico. It had been hiding there for 600 years. The place is called Genola, and it's massive, about 360 hectares with more than 1,100 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, its own network of roads, and a super organized city plan. Because it was so deep in the jungle, you'd never realize how huge it really was unless you spent years hiking through it. But modern tech swooped in to save the day, using LiDAR, a kind of laser scanning tool. Researchers flew over the site, and in just 2 hours, they had a full 3D map of the entire city. Genola was built sometime between 1350 and 1521, back in pre-Columbian times, and it used to be buzzing with life. It was a major hub for the Zapotec people, who had been around in the region since about 600 BCE. Families there lived in homes with big central patios surrounded by rooms, and as they got new members, they just add more rooms and stretch their houses out. They even used the mountains around them as natural walls and channeled mountain water for drainage. A lot of their buildings are still standing, which is wild considering how much time has passed. By the late 1400s, the Zapotec were real powerhouses along the Pacific coast. They even fought off the Aztecs, who were constantly trying to expand. At Genola, they survived a brutal 7-month siege. But even though hiding in the mountains kept them safe, it wasn't perfect. They didn't have enough fresh water or farmland to feed everyone. Just 12 miles away, the smaller city of Tehuantepec had what they needed. So the Zapotec moved there right before the Spanish arrived in 1521. What the scientists have seen so far is just scratching the surface. That LiDAR scan revealed more than 1,000 buildings, and archaeologists are planning years of research to figure it all out. Instead of digging everything up and risking damage, They'll use advanced scanning tech to keep studying the city safely. Alright, now let's hop across the world to Egypt, where archaeologists stumbled on a whole lost city called Imet, tucked away in the eastern Nile Delta. The place was buried. Story tower houses, basically mini skyscrapers of the ancient world. They had multiple floors, thick foundations, and could handle some serious weight. That kind of vertical living is super rare in Egypt, especially outside the Nile Delta. It showed that people in Imet weren't just spreading across the land, but stacking upward, which means the city was packed, carefully planned, and way more urban than anyone thought for that time. And it wasn't just fancy housing either. Archaeologists also uncovered a grain processing center with paved work areas, animal pens, and organized spaces for food production. Clearly, this was a city with a real economy running behind it. Not far from there, they spotted a ceremonial road that once led to a temple for Wadjet, Imet's patron deity. But later on, other buildings got plunked down over the road, which shows that Wadjet's worship faded over time. Still, the ruins coughed up some amazing relics, a green faience little funerary figurine, and a stela showing Harpocrates perched on crocodiles and gripping snakes. He was the Greek spin on Horus, deity of silence, secrets, and the newborn sun. And there was even a bronze sistrum, an ancient Egyptian musical instrument decorated with twin heads of Hathor. Turns out, Imet was active from around the 4th century BCE onward, stretching from Egypt's late period into the Roman era. Its location along trade routes made it a magnet for merchants and pilgrims visiting Wadjet's temple. So it wasn't just hanging on, it was thriving, connecting, trading, and adapting with the times. And this isn't just another dusty ruin. Imet is giving us a window into everyday life, religion, and urban planning in the Delta, which we've always known way less about compared to the big pyramids and tombs.
So stargazers were chasing the Perseid meteor shower, but instead, they got something more unusual and rare, a massive cosmic swirl in the sky. In August 2025, reports poured in from Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Ohio, Nebraska, a total of at least 10 states, and Ontario, Canada. The ghostly spiral was floating over the highways, houses, and woods for almost 10 minutes before vanishing like a Penn and Teller trick. It bloomed, unfurled, and then just faded. The internet went nuts about the mysterious spiral. Witnesses snapped video with shaky hands, wondering what they just saw. And of course, theories bloom faster than wildflowers in spring. Some people thought it must have been a Perseid meteor. It all happened smack in the middle of the season for those shooting stars. But meteors blaze bright and fast, and this was slow, hypnotic, and weirdly beautiful. Then a rocket theory took hold. The United Launch Alliance's Vulcan from Florida was a prime suspect. But the geometry didn't add up, as that rocket headed east, not the Midwest. The timing and path just didn't align. Finally, the European dark horse entered the spotlight, Ariane 6. They launched this rocket with a weather satellite on it from French Guiana just minutes earlier. Some astronomers mentioned that it probably released frozen exhaust high in the atmosphere during its cleanup phase. That spinning fuel cloud could have caught the sunlight just right, creating a spiral that drifted in the upper atmosphere. People were able to see it for a good stretch before dissipation. What we do know is that the physics behind what we witnessed are normally part of the twilight phenomenon. As the upper stage of a rocket starts spinning in space, it dumps leftover fuel. In the upper atmosphere, that fuel instantly turns into ice crystals that scatter sunlight and form a spiral that looks like something spun straight out of a fantasy novel. It's totally natural and doesn't have to do with extraterrestrial civilizations like some people thought. Still, nothing's confirmed, but there are more similar glowing structures lately, mostly from SpaceX's Falcon 9 rockets. That's why they even have a nickname, SpaceX Spirals. In March 2025, a glowing swirl formed above Europe like a neon whirlpool, or the Milky Way got into a blender. The blue spiral stretched and spun steadily for about 8 to 12 minutes above the UK and further into Sweden, Poland, Hungary, and Croatia. The sponsor of this sky show was a Falcon 9 rocket that had launched from Cape Canaveral earlier that day. Once the rocket reached space, it dumped leftover fuel that froze into ice crystals, and people got to enjoy an amazing sight. Now, normally, SpaceX spirals come in a perfect vortex shape, but the one that appeared over Europe in 2024 had two faint, horn-like pillars of light. It's the only horn spiral we've seen so far. It photobombed the auroras over countries like Poland, Lithuania, and the Czech Republic. Earlier that evening, a Falcon 9 rocket launched from California's Vandenberg Air Force Base, carrying Earth-observing satellites. Another layer to the story is that there was a strong G3-level geomagnetic storm happening at the same time, thanks to a coronal mass ejection that crashed into Earth's magnetic field earlier that day. That storm pumped up the northern lights, which became the staged backdrop for the spiral's eerie entrance. Another SpaceX spiral example is from April 2023. Over Alaska, people who went out to watch the northern lights suddenly froze as a glowing blue spiral swirled into view. It was drifting across skies like someone had opened a portal to another dimension. Cameras caught it, social media went wild, and Stargate in the sky was suddenly trending. But as it turned out, the portal was no invitation from the Milky Way, but the aftermath of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Frozen exhaust spun in the upper atmosphere and reflected sunlight in a perfect corkscrew pattern, framed against shimmering auroras. The science was straightforward, but the sight was straight out of a science fiction film. Now, spirals aren't the only kind of weird atmospheric shows nature throws for us. In Italy in 2023, a massive red ring of light suddenly flashed high above a storm. Scientists identified it as an ELF, a type of transient luminous event. When a lightning bolt unleashes a powerful electromagnetic pulse, it slams into the ionosphere's nitrogen and creates a glowing red disk hundreds of miles across. The phenomenon lasted only milliseconds, but thanks to time-lapse cameras, it burned into memory like the outline of an extraterrestrial saucer. Normally, only satellites orbiting the Earth can spot ELVs, but in this case, the lightning bolt was at least 10 times more powerful than regular ones, so it was visible to humans on Earth. Another cool thing about it is that it looked like it was hanging in the sky, directly above the town of Posigno. But in reality, the massive halo appeared above central Italy and part of the Adriatic Sea. It was just a forced perspective that made it look like it was in a completely different space. You can only get the best view of some sky shows directly from space. Aboard the International Space Station, orbiting 250 miles above Earth, astronauts once reported seeing two mysterious blue blobs glowing beneath them. From orbit, they looked like deep-sea creatures that had been misplaced in the sky, two radiant orbs pulsing against the blackness of space. It turned out that one blob was a massive lightning strike somewhere in the Gulf of Thailand. You can't normally spot those from the ISS, as clouds hide them. But this one strike occurred next to a large circular gap in the top of the clouds, and the lightning illuminated the surrounding walls of the cloudy caldera-like structure. The second glowing blue blob was the Moon playing tricks with light. Because of where the Moon was lined up with the International Space Station, the sunlight it reflected had to pass through Earth's atmosphere before reaching the astronauts' cameras. And when light hit the atmosphere, things got funky. Tiny particles floating in our air, like dust, water, and other stuff, scattered light in different ways. Not all colors of light behave the same, though. Each color has a different wavelength. Blue light waves are the shortest of the bunch, which makes them the easiest to scatter in all directions. So, when moonlight passes through our atmosphere, the blue part of that light spreads out the most. That's why the Moon looked like a fuzzy blue blob with a halo instead of its usual white glow. It's the same reason the sky looks blue during the day. Sunlight hits our Earth's atmosphere, and the blue wavelengths scatter way more than the reds or yellows. Our eyes pick up that scattered blue light and boom, blue sky. So basically, the ISS astronauts weren't seeing a new phenomenon. They were seeing the same science that makes summer skies look so bright. Only this time, the moon got the blue makeover. Then, residents of Newburyport, Massachusetts, saw a fire rainbow pop up out of nowhere on June 2, 2024. Now, technically, it's called a circumhorizontal arc, and it happens when sunlight hits ice crystals high in the clouds at just the right angle, bending into a slice of rainbow that looks like it's flaming across the sky. It's all about timing and angles. The sun needs to be over 58 degrees high, and you need cirrus clouds or jet contrails carrying ice crystals. Light passes through the crystals, splits, and suddenly, boom, a rainbow in the clouds, usually just peeking through gaps. It's not just Massachusetts. In Weatherford, Texas, on April 15, 2025, jellyfish clouds called virga did the same thing. Ice was falling but never hitting the ground, creating a floating rainbow halo. And on April 25, 2024, in Ohio, photographers caught the crystals scattering light into perfect rainbow colors again. So, next time you're outside, keep your eyes peeled. Mother Nature loves to show off, and sometimes she paints the sky on fire. Okay, are you ready for an epic fight between two prehistoric predators? Well, hang on. Look at this creature. You know it. An ancient shark about 65 feet long that used to swim through the dark waters of the world's oceans and was so terrifying it had no enemies. Well, almost. Scientists have recently discovered the remains of another ancient predatory fish off the coast of Australia, a fish that lived around the same time as Megalodon. It was small, about the size of a dolphin, but it could pose a danger to the infamous shark. How is it possible if this creature was many times smaller? Well, let's take a look. This monster is called Janjucetus, and technically it wasn't exactly a fish. It was a distant relative of the modern baleen whale. Outwardly, it may seem quite cute, similar to that baleen whale I mentioned, but you wouldn't want to meet it in the ocean. It had the massive skull of a whale, large eyes the size of tennis balls, and a short snout with an immensely powerful jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. In other words, it was like a shark version of the baleen whale. Janjucetus lived during an ancient period called the Oligocene, which was about 33 to 23 million years ago. At that time, there was an incredible abundance of life in the world's waters. Giant penguins, small whales, sharks 2 to 3 times larger than modern ones, primitive dolphin species, and many other unusual creatures. Now imagine that in this ancient and terrifying neighborhood, a giant megalodon met a Janjucetus. At first sight, it's not love. The megalodon's victory is obvious, but don't rush to write the Janjucetus off. It's agile and fast. It's quite possible that it was more mobile than Megalodon, and during the fight, it would have avoided a direct attack. The Megalodon would have lost sight of such a small opponent, while the Janjucetus would have swum up to the shark's belly and opened its jaws. They're small, but there are a lot of sharp teeth. Now, these teeth were designed to rip and cut. The Janjucetus would attack the Megalodon with a small but very unpleasant bite, and the shark would have swum away after such a punch. But who knows? Maybe Megalodon would have immediately eaten Janjucetus in the first seconds of the fight. Megalodon could have won, but in terms of speed and mobility, it would have lost. So let's look at something bigger, something that could actually have competed with Megalodon. It doesn't have to be a monster living at the same time as the ancient shark. We can make our own rules. Imagine that all ancient marine creatures ended up in the same pool with Megalodon. So its next opponent is the Liopleurodon. Now initially scientists thought that this monster could grow to be 82 feet long, which is even larger than Megalodon. But more accurate studies have shown that it only reached 32 feet, which is about the size of a modern orca. The Liopleurodon lived in the waters of Western Europe around 160 to 155 million years ago and shared territory with other dangerous reptiles such as ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. Yes, it was smaller than them, but it had one big advantage. The Leopleodor possessed one of the largest jaws in the animal kingdom, which accounted for about 20% of the total length of its entire body. That's a mouth. Its jaws were about 6.5 feet long. A huge, toothy mouth the size of an adult basketball player, filled with smooth and dagger-sharp teeth, ideal for cutting steaks and peeling ammonite shells. And by the way, scientists suspect that ammonites and squid were the creature's main diet. This super predator was also a very fast and agile creature that ambushed and attacked its prey from below. Megalodon would have been in big trouble. The grip strength of a Leopleurodon would surely be more powerful than that of Megalodon. Besides, the Leopleurodon's size and mobility would allow it to attack the enemy from different sides. It's probably why Megalodon would have lost in that fight. The next opponent for our Megalodon is the Dunkleosteus, and to be honest, this guy has almost no chance of defeating the large ancient shark. But the Megalodon probably wouldn't have beaten it either. The Dunkleosteus was one of the earliest predators of the ocean. It lived in the late Devonian, about 382 to 358 million years ago. Its size was about 13 to 32 feet or even less, and it also had no teeth. What? A predator without teeth? How did it survive in a dangerous prehistoric world? Well, it grabbed and chewed food with the help of special jaw growths. Those growths were so powerful that they could pierce steel, if there was any around. In a sense, these were not teeth, but bones. Okay, let's say the Megalodon grabbed this predator by the belly and it couldn't do anything with its growths. But the problem is that the Megalodon would have hardly done anything either, because the Dunkleosteus was a heavily armored fish. Just look at this shell. It probably limited its mobility, but it provided incredible protection. This monster felt like a big stone in the teeth of the Megalodon. It's unlikely that the Megalodon would have wanted to chew this stone. It would have spit it out, and both predators would have gone about their business. We've got a draw here. And now, the final match. Here's the next opponent. Do you see anything? Is this enemy invisible? What's happening? Ah, there it is. Meet the Telemonstrum. It's a tiny ancient monster just 11 inches long. Huh? What can it do to a giant shark? Next to the Megalodon, the Telemonstrum is like a box of matches compared to a human. But if the Megalodon had had a developed brain, like people do, it would have been very scared of this creature and would have immediately swum away. Many people scream and run away in fear when they see a creepy insect crawling or flying, or when a mouse runs across the floor. Some of us jump on the couch in horror. Not all of us, but some. The Megalodon would have jumped out of the water like a dolphin if the Telemonstrum had charged at it. Just check it out. It looks like an underwater bike with a long trunk with a jaw at the end. And these handlebars, where you would put your hands to control your bike, are the eyes. It's like the eyes of a hammerhead fish, only thinner and longer. The body of a squid, cuttlefish fins, snail eyes, and a toothed proboscis. This is a horror movie character. Scientists say it probably hunted jellyfish, small fish, and shrimp. And it didn't chew the food, it licked it like ice cream. Obviously, it's not an opponent for the Megalodon, but it's still a creepy monster. Well, what would have happened had it really started a fight with the Megalodon? It would have been difficult for the ancient shark to find it. It would have been unlikely to catch this tiny monster in the mouth, and the Telemonstrum wouldn't have been able to do anything to the Megalodon either. However, I can think of one strategy. The creepy creature had a long trunk. What if it had just swum under the Megalodon's fin and started licking it? If the shark had felt the tickles, then it would probably have worked. But most likely, they wouldn't have fought each other. It seems like they would have made perfect friends. The Telemonstrum lived about 300 million years ago in shallow seas and estuaries that covered the territory of the U.S. When scientists discovered this creature in 1955, they were shocked because no one had any idea what it was. Experts compared it to worms, tunicates, conodonts, mollusks, and vertebrates. And do you know who it really was? Well, scientists still have no idea. They can't determine its place on the tree of evolution. Perhaps this is some new branch, and its descendants simply haven't survived to this day. The Megalodon was one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. But now we know that other equally scary monsters lived in the oceans. But what if the megalodon lived today? Who could have defeated him? A blue whale who would be even bigger than this ancient shark. But the blue whale seems to be a kind animal. It wouldn't fight. How about the kraken? The kraken versus the megalodon? Well, let's save this fight for another video. Ooh, mysterious mountain ranges hidden under thousands of tons of ice. Bizarre transparent creatures with see-through skin, singing snow plains. Antarctica has its own terrifying secrets. And now, a mysterious ice hole the size of Switzerland that keeps popping open. And scientists have finally figured out why. This hole, called the Maud Rise Polynya, was first spotted in 1974 and 1976 in the Weddell Sea. Since then, it's been kind of playing hard to get. Sometimes it appears, sometimes it disappears for years. And when it does show up, it mysteriously changes size. For decades, researchers were trying to figure out what makes it form. Then, in 2016 and 2017, the Polynya went absolutely massive, more than 30,000 square miles. The hole stuck around for several weeks during winters. It was the first time since the 1970s that the Weddell Sea had such a huge, long-lasting Polynya. Here's the deal with Antarctic sea ice. In summer, the ice is at its smallest, around 1 million square miles. Yeah, that's considered small. By winter, it spreads to a whopping 7 million square miles, covering about 4% of Earth's surface in weird white tiles. Most of this ice grows during the weeks-long polar night on the floating ice shelves around the continent. These holes in the ice, called polynyas, usually form when strong winds from inland push the ice tiles apart. That same cold wind also freezes more seawater inside the hole, adding extra chunks to the ice sheet. But the Maud Rise Polynya isn't near the coast, where those winds normally help make holes. Out in the open ocean, holes like this are rare. Add in the fact that ice across the Southern Ocean has been shrinking. No wonder scientists are left bewildered. What exact conditions are creating this stubborn giant ice hole? To crack the mystery, the scientists dove into a mountain of data, satellites, floating sensors, even info from tagged marine animals. Plus, they had years of past observations from other researchers. And they found something unusual. In 2016 and 2017, the Weddell Sea's circular ocean current, called the Weddell Gyre, was stronger than usual. That extra punch made it easier for salty, warmer water from deep below to reach the surface. The Maud Rise Polynya sits above an underwater mountain called Maud Rise. During those big Polynya years, the stronger current caused salt to gather around this submerged peak. On the surface, the wind whipped over the ice, creating a corkscrew effect. It literally pulled that salty water up from below. The extra salt lowered the freezing point of the surface water, allowing the Maud Rise Polynya to form and stick around. Polynyas are really important for the planet. The dense salty water formed in these holes can travel huge distances, spreading across the global ocean and affecting climates everywhere. But these magnificent holes aren't the only cool and mysterious phenomena Antarctica is famous for. How about underground lakes? Or shall I say under-ice lakes? Because there are entire lakes hidden under Antarctica's thick ice. Scientists first found them back in 1970 using radar, and now they think there are around 400 lakes tucked under around 2 miles of ice in the explored areas. These lakes likely formed after Antarctica broke off from Gondwanaland, the ancient supercontinent. Surprisingly, the water in the lakes doesn't freeze because the ice above presses down too hard. Hey, it's physics, bro! The biggest of them all is Lake Vostok, discovered in the 1990s. It sits a bit more than 2 miles below the ice. Scientists have drilled down to take samples, and the water they pulled up was about 26 degrees Fahrenheit, even though the lake had been trapped under ice for over 20 million years. There's also Lake Williams. In 2014, scientists made a lit discovery there. They found a thriving colony of microorganisms nearly a mile under the ice. Those tiny creatures never saw sunlight or fresh air. Instead, they used methane and ammonium as energy to grow. Another marvel hides in plain sight in the McMurdo Dry Valley. It's a waterfall that looks like something straight out of a horror movie. Bright crimson water, like blood gushing from a wound in the ice, pours down 5 stories from Taylor Glacier into Lake Bonny. Ooh, spooky. But there's actually a scientific reason behind it. The water that feeds Blood Falls used to be part of a salty lake. Now, it's completely cut off from the atmosphere because glaciers formed on top of it. Trapped more than 1,300 feet underground, the water has become super salty, 3 times saltier than seawater, and it can't freeze. This underground water is also packed with iron and completely lacks oxygen and sunlight. When it slowly seeps through a crack in the glacier and hits the open air, the iron oxidizes, basically rusts, and turns the water that eerie dark red. With such creepy landscapes, Antarctica might look like a frozen wasteland, freezing cold, almost no rain, and winds that could knock you off your feet. The coldest Earth's temperatures ever was recorded there, minus 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And still, Antarctica is actually home to some seriously bizarre wildlife. For the longest time, scientists thought nothing could survive under all that ice. Turns out, they were very wrong. There are all sorts of creatures that have adapted to the brutal environment. Tiny microbes, crustaceans, colossal squid, and spiders so big their legs could cover a dinner plate. Giant worms with shiny golden bristles and huge sharp-toothed jaws also lurk under the ice. And then there's the ice fish, a completely see-through fish with huge eyes and organs you can literally see through its skin. These fish have built-in antifreeze proteins to survive the freezing waters, and they can't live anywhere warmer. Even stranger, they don't have hemoglobin, the protein that makes our blood red. In other words, they survive without the stuff that literally keeps most animals alive. But Antarctica wasn't always the frozen desert we know today. Millions of years ago, before the Ice Age, it was actually warm, lush, and full of life, maybe even home to ancient civilizations. Hard to imagine, huh? Scientists figured this out after finding fossilized wood, tropical tree remains, and leaf impressions, all pointing to the existence of rainforests. On top of that, they've uncovered fossils of marine animals, birds, and dinosaurs from the Cretaceous period. Even tiny creatures left their mark. Fossilized beetle wings from 14 to 20 million years ago, single-cell fossils, and, astonishingly, 50-million-year-old sperm cells preserved in the egg case of an extinct worm. So now, it probably won't shock you when I tell you that beneath Antarctica's thick ice sheets, there's a massive hidden mountain range. The Gamburtsi Mountains stretch for 745 miles and rise to almost 10,000 feet, about the third the height of Mount Everest. And all this is buried under between 6,500 to 13,100 feet of ice. The mountains were discovered in 1958. Scientists noted a thin patch of ice and some weird gravity readings while crossing the continent. Even though no one has ever seen those mountains directly, researchers use radar to map their shape and gravitational and magnetic readings to study them all the way to their base. Perhaps the craziest part is that the Gamburtsis are around 1 billion years old. So, in theory, they should have eroded away long ago. How they're still standing is a mystery. Most scientists think a frozen mantle beneath the ice might be protecting them from erosion, keeping this ancient range intact. And finally, Antarctica has its own soundtrack. The Ross Ice Shelf, the continent's largest ice shelf, is several hundred feet thick and spreads over 193,000 square miles, roughly the size of France. And scientists have recently discovered that this massive ice slab actually sings. The eerie melody comes from wind blowing over snow dunes, which creates vibrations in the ice and a nearly continuous seismic hum. You can't hear it with your ears, but seismic sensors pick up the mournful tune. In fact, it was discovered by accident. Scientists just installed special sensors to monitor other ice behaviors. Now, even cooler, the song changes depending on what's happening on the ice. Melting, storms, and shifting snow all tweak the vibrations. Researchers are now using this haunting melody as a kind of early warning system. They listen to it in real time to track the ice shelf stability and potential collapse. It was April 2025 when geologists went back to Yellowstone's Norris Geyser Basin for the first time this year. And while doing their usual check, they realized that something was different this time. Where there used to be just a boring patch of ground, now there was a giant hole, about 13 feet wide, filled with weird, milky, light blue water. Everyone was terrified. Was it the sign that the Yellowstone supervolcano was ready to erupt? If so, it would be a worldwide disaster, the kind that destroys cities. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, if such an eruption occurred, the after effects would be felt all over the world. To start, the areas immediately surrounding Yellowstone would experience pyroclastic flows. That's the lava that erupts out of a volcano, including a high-density mix of volcanic gas, ash, pumice, and hot lava blocks. Those flows would destroy everything they touch, and an eruption of Yellowstone would send them into Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. Areas further away from Yellowstone would escape the flows, but they would experience falling ash. It would come down heavily in the states closest to the epicenter. The ash would be especially dangerous for anyone breathing it in. The weight of the ash would also pose a serious threat. It would smother crops and collapse buildings as it piles up. Tragic consequences would be countless, but we'll talk about them later, because soon after the discovery, the weird pit surprised even experts. Geologists found rocks scattered everywhere. Some were about a foot across, and all of them were dusted with gray mud. This mud matched the walls of the new spring. It was like the place had simply exploded, but nobody had actually seen it happen. The team checked old satellite images to figure out when it appeared. In December 2024, the ground was totally normal. By January 6, 2025, a little dip had formed. And by February 13th, that water-filled hole was finally there. But the weird thing was that the sensors that usually pick up major hydrothermal explosions didn't detect anything. There was no giant blast or warning signs. Later, it turned out that this puzzling opening in the ground hadn't just popped up in one huge explosion. Instead, it formed from a bunch of smaller bursts over time. Little explosions first threw out rocks, then mud, and eventually created the pit. With time, it filled with silica-rich water. That was a huge relief for everyone. Yellowstone sits on a supervolcano, and its big explosions are a nightmare scenario. Luckily, this time, it was just a slow-building, small-scale explosion. It was dramatic, sure, but totally manageable. You see, Yellowstone National Park is full of geysers, hot springs, and all kinds of natural landscapes. But under the surface, things get incredibly intense, all because of the supervolcano. Now, supervolcanoes are often extremely large. They often have no cone at all, since they're typically the remains of gigantic magma chambers. Once, those chambers flared up, leaving behind a caldera. They're usually located over hotspots. It's no surprise that supervolcanoes can produce super eruptions, and when they do it, they blow more than 240 cubic miles of ash, molten rock, and hot gases up into the air. In other words, 4 super eruptions could fill the Grand Canyon to the brim. Supervolcanoes form when huge volumes of scorching hot magma escape from deep underground. This magma rises close to the surface but can't break through Earth's crust. So, a pressurized pool of bubbling magma gathers at a depth of only several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. And then, bang, a super eruption occurs. Now, back in 2015, researchers at the University of Utah mapped out the main magma chamber of the Yellowstone supervolcano and were shocked by its size. And then, they found another one below it. Together, these underground magma pools could hold enough molten rock to fill the Grand Canyon 11 times. All that magma pushes up on the ground above, which is why Yellowstone rises about an inch or two every year. That slow lift might not sound like much, but combine it with the fact that Yellowstone is still an active volcano and has a volcanic explosivity index of 8, and it's enough to make you wonder what could happen if things went south. And yes, Yellowstone has indeed been a bit jumpy in recent years. In March 2023, there were 354 earthquakes in the area. Most were tiny, but the biggest hit a magnitude 3.7, part of a swarm of 106 quakes. Now, before you freak out, experts from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory say there's no need to panic. No eruption is coming anytime soon. Volcanoes don't stick to a schedule. Just because Yellowstone hasn't erupted in a long time doesn't mean it's about to blow. The park is stable for now, but scientists are keeping a close eye on everything underground, the quakes, the rising ground, and even temperature changes, just to be safe. The superhot plume of magma, a hotspot under Yellowstone, has been churning for 17 million years. The Earth's crust slowly moved over it, making the hotspot leave a trail of volcanoes stretching more than 450 miles along the Snake River Plain. Most of those ancient ones are now buried under layers of lava and sediment. In just the past 2.1 million years, Yellowstone has unleashed 3 cataclysmic eruptions, so massive they managed to reshape the land. Each explosion sent pyroclastic flows, rivers of searing hot rock, ash, and pumice racing outward for miles. The debris piled up in layers hundreds of feet thick, some forming solid lava-like rock. When those eruptions emptied the underground magma chambers, the roof collapsed, forming the massive calderas we see today. Even after those mega eruptions, Yellowstone didn't stop. Between 180,000 and 70,000 years ago, enormous rhyolite lava flows, sometimes over 144 cubic miles, poured out. Some flows followed north-south vent lines. The West Yellowstone flow erupted around 110,000 years ago. The Nez Perez Creek flow followed 160,000 years ago. If you stand at Madison Junction on the caldera's northwest rim, you can see it, a cliff that formed when the Lava Creek Tuff eruption collapsed the land 640,000 years ago. And inside the caldera, you'll see the hardened lava flows snaking across the floor. Figuring out when a supervolcano might blow is like being able to read nature's warning signals. Thousands of years before a massive eruption, the heat underground starts building, and the magma chambers become like ticking pressure cookers. Little signs start showing up. Gas bubbles escape as the pressure shifts, and earthquakes shake the ground. The land above slowly rises. Cracks appear. Hot springs and geysers start acting up, heating even more than usual. Now, what would happen if Yellowstone erupted? Remember those pyroclastic flows we talked about before? They can contain 2 parts: the lower flow of the hot lava that moves at ground level, and a cloud of ash that follows above the lava level. So the 2 of them would devastate huge areas. The ash would even reach Europe within 3 to 4 days of the eruption, but it wouldn't be so bad there. After that, it would only take around 2 to 3 weeks before cooler temperatures set in around the globe, all thanks to the sulfur gas that would get to the upper atmosphere after the eruption. Scientists predict that global temperatures would drop by up to 10 to 12 degrees. These consequences could last for 6 to 10 years. putting an end to monsoons, which could cause widespread famine in Asia. Scared? Well, don't be. The good news is that scientists don't believe that the sleeping giant under Yellowstone National Park will wake up in our lifetime. Experts say the next Yellowstone eruption won't likely happen for hundreds of thousands of years. And even then, it may not be that bad, because scientists have discovered that the magma lurking within Yellowstone is actually split up amongst 4 different chambers. Not only that, but some of the reservoirs of magma are likely to cool down and solidify, lessening the chances of an eruption. So, while an eruption does sound like it would change the landscape of the world, it's very unlikely to happen anytime soon. Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1,600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1,600 years old, was Tikab Shak, the first known king of Caracol. His name is commonly interpreted as Tree Branch Rain Deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Shak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Shak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Ekchua, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Shak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because, no, you don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into 3 layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. and certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1,600 years, no one found him. This makes Tekhab Shak's tomb the first ever discovered at Karakol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Karakol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Karakol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Karakol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Shak's tomb was one of the three major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Karakol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Karakol over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's keep out, the ceiling might fall on you. Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So, what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of Tekhab Shak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Karakol and other Maya cities shows this in action: thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Shak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Karakol is full of secrets: a hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name. Almost unbelievable. And amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh? Once upon a time, there was a lighthouse so tall that you could spot its beam from 30 miles away. A mysterious tower that was the symbol of wealth and engineering genius. Made with stones so giant and heavy that it still makes us gasp. How did they do that? It has survived earthquakes, one after another, until it finally crumbled in the 14th century. Fast forward to today, and archaeologists have just hauled 22 of its colossal blocks off the seafloor. They're putting the tower back together to be once again admired and explored, but not how you might imagine. The Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a lighthouse, it was the lighthouse of ancient civilizations, one of the longest-standing world wonders. Built around 280 BCE, on a tiny island called Pharos, it reached about 330 feet up in the sky. For comparison, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty or Big Ben. Now, keep in mind that this was before cranes, steel beams, or gym enthusiasts, and it becomes awe-inspiring. For sailors, spotting that gleaming tower was like finally seeing your exit sign after hours of driving on the world's most dangerous highway. The lighthouse was a sight for sore eyes, because legend says the waters around Pharos were tricky, full of hidden reefs that could smash ships to pieces. Old sources claim it took about 12 years to build, with the price tag being around 800 Athenian talents of silver, which is an ancient unit of weight close to 57 pounds. That means someone had to haul chests holding 23 tons of coins, without a forklift, most likely across the sea. Wow! The lighthouse was so impressive that the word Pharos ended up being used for lighthouses in a bunch of different languages. The structure had a cool three-tier design. It was square at the bottom, octagonal in the middle, and cylindrical on top. On its top, it had a statue, most likely of Zeus or Poseidon. The lighthouse's white limestone exterior was polished with a sun-catching plaster, so it gleamed like a beacon even without fire. At night, things were different. Wood was hard to come by in Egypt, so the fire on top may have been fed with bundles of papyrus roots or even naphtha for a brighter flame. Whatever the fuel, its glow was boosted by a massive polished bronze mirror. Now, bronze mirrors were common back then. It wasn't until the Renaissance, way long after the Pharos had crumbled, that glass-coated mirrors became standard in European lighthouses. During the day, the same mirror could reflect sunlight, and the tower's bright white silhouette, along with the smoke curling up from the fire, would help sailors find their way. Alexandria was one of the biggest ports in the ancient world, filled with merchants, travelers, and messengers, and the lighthouse was its landmark. Now, fun fact, if you're a fan of the Song of Ice and Fire universe, it certainly popped into your mind when reading about the High Tower of Old Town. Some fans speculate that not just the fictional lighthouse, but also the city itself, was directly inspired by Alexandria. And George R.R. Martin's love for ancient wonders doesn't stop there. There's also the Titan of Bravos, and the beloved author confirmed the intentional parallel to the imposing Colossus of Rhodes. For over 1,600 years, the lighthouse stood high against time, storms, wars, and intrigues, just like in the Game of Thrones. But it was finally defeated by nature itself. Sadly, a few major earthquakes during the 14th century brought it down, scattering its massive stones across the seabed. For over 5 centuries, the remains of the lighthouse just sat there under the waves, basically turning into an underwater rock garden. Divers knew about them, but hauling up 60-ton blocks from the sea is a job for a superhero, or a super powerful crane. And, until recently, it was a lot safer to leave them where they were. Alexandria is still, to this day, a busy harbor, and isn't exactly the easiest place for delicate archaeology. In the 1990s, archaeologists started mapping the whole area around Pharos Island. What they found was precision-cut limestone and granite blocks, some still showing carved edges. Over time, more than 100 massive pieces were cataloged, including chunks of columns, statues, and giant building blocks that could only have come from the lighthouse. Finally, in 2025, Egyptian and French teams joined up and brought that super crane along with a team of divers. In a carefully planned operation, they brought up 22 giant slabs from the seabed. There were parts like door lintels, threshold slabs, and a mysterious pylon, speculated to be some kind of monument. Some of those blocks weigh 70 to 80 tons, which is the weight of 20 African elephants. Those giant boulders are on dry land for the first time in over 600 years. But what happens now? Are researchers really about to rebuild the lighthouse like a giant Lego set? Not quite. You can't just stack century-old blocks like that. For starters, no one's 100% sure what the Lighthouse of Alexandria really looked like. Yeah, we've got drawings and clues, most famously, the tiny images stamped into Roman coins from Alexandria. But they're more like an artist's quick sketch, not quite the blueprints for recreating something down to the last detail. And then there's the missing pieces problem. Those recovered stones are just a fraction of the original structure. Over the centuries, much of the lighthouse's material was repurposed. In fact, the spot where the lighthouse used to stand is now home to the citadel of Qaitbay, a fortress built right on its old foundations. The fort is not just a symbol of the past, but also a tourist attraction and a recognizable Alexandrian landmark. So, no, Alexandria isn't about to get its legendary tower back. At least not in that way. Instead, these newly recovered stoneworks are headed for conservation labs to be studied. Specialists will clean, stabilize, and document every carved groove and chisel mark. Later, they're likely to head to a museum. After all, it's part of the national treasure. However, that's not the end of the story. We still have the technology on our side that promises a fully recreated and explorable lighthouse, just like it was all those centuries ago. The entire endeavor is called the Pharos Project, and its mission is to turn those hauled massive stones, lintels, thresholds, base slabs, and even a mystery pylon into a complete walk-through digital twin of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Each piece is getting high-resolution 3D scanning, joining more than 100 fragments already recorded underwater. The goal isn't just a research. The Pharos Project aims to bring back the lighthouse's original look and feel and turn it into a museum. 330-foot-tall structures often have a lot of stairs, and virtual reality is going to be far less painful for my old feet. Museum visitors could walk around its base in augmented reality, while researchers could use the model to test new theories about its structure and function. Hopefully, we'll be able to customize our own atmosphere, dim the lights, and examine the walls just like in a video game. Maybe they'll render pigeons and seagulls to make it even more authentic. We still don't have many details, but the entire thing is being recorded and will be made into a documentary. While we don't have booths to time travel, talented designers can bring the past back to the present. They just need the correct concept art. Sure, nowadays you can recreate almost everything in 3D, but the point here is the authenticity, to put it back together exactly how it was. This is what the Project Pharos wants to achieve. Maybe one day, every ancient world wonder will end up being recreated in a similar way. But there's no reason to stop there. Virtual tourism can save time and money, and while nothing can replace the real experience, visiting authentic locations recreated in virtual reality may be the next best option. Locals are already excited. The citadel of Qaitbay is already drawing people, but now Alexandria is about to get the first digital tourist attraction. Soon anyone with a VR headset can stand on top of this historic wonder, squint while watching the sunset, and finally answer the burning trouble to get exhausted while climbing virtual stairs. And can I customize the soundtrack? Ooh.
There's a country that runs on volcanoes, rivers, and lakes for power. Sounds like a fantasy game setting, but it's all true. Welcome to New Zealand. This island nation already gets about 85% of its electricity from renewable resources like hydro, geothermal, and wind. That's impressive, but it's actually just getting started. Now, let's zoom in on a place called the South Taranaki Bight. It's a stretch of sea off the west coast of the North Island. At first glance, it looks just like any other tropical postcard location, but it's hiding New Zealand's clean energy jackpot. It's all about the South Taranaki Offshore Wind Project. This game changer in the world of green power will build wind turbines in the ocean, enough to generate almost 1 gigawatt of clean electricity. That's roughly enough to power over 430,000 homes. To put that into perspective, that's almost a quarter of all the households in New Zealand. If the country can pull this off, it won't just become greener. It'll kickstart an entirely new profitable industry: offshore wind. It means over 600 new jobs in construction, operations, and maintenance. And these jobs are future-proof. The kind that won't disappear as the world moves away from oil and gas. It also means more tech development for the country, and of course, more energy independence. Experts also believe it will secure more business investment in New Zealand, and the entire offshore wind sector should bring in around $30 billion to the country's GDP between now and 2050. The South Taranaki Bight is a perfect location for this project. It gets consistent, powerful winds, not stormy and chaotic, but steady and useful. That's exactly what you want for wind turbines. And the seabed here is deep, but not too deep, which is ideal for turbine platforms. They usually build traditional wind turbines on land or in shallow water where they can stand on firm foundations. But the ones planned here are offshore wind turbines, which means engineers can install them in deeper water, further from land, and in stronger wind zones. The electricity the turbines generate will move to a major onshore connection point through cables. From there, it will travel via national grid infrastructure to power homes, businesses, and industry. To make all this happen, the project team has already laid the groundwork. One of the coolest things they've done so far is a floating LiDAR campaign. LiDAR means light detection and ranging. And it's like radar, but with lasers. They put this high-tech gear on a floating buoy that stays in the ocean for months. It collects crazy precise data about wind speeds, wave patterns, sea temperature, currents. That's all the stuff you need to plan an offshore power plant. If the project works out, it will take New Zealand to a new green level. Right now, the country still uses fossil fuels during peak demand times, or when the hydro lakes run low. Most of those fossil fuels come from overseas, and they're expensive, polluting, and unreliable. But if offshore wind goes big, it could plug those energy gaps, especially during winter when winds are stronger and electricity use spikes. And if New Zealand produces more clean energy than it needs, it could start exporting it as green hydrogen. It's hydrogen made from water using renewable electricity, which is really healthy for our planet. The South Taranaki Offshore Wind Project, if all goes well, will be more than a local win. It'll be a blueprint, a model other regions of New Zealand could follow. There are wind-rich areas all around the country's coastline, and floating offshore technology makes them more accessible than ever. Some scientists believe New Zealand could build up to 8 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050. That's 8 times what's being planned in Taranaki right now. Imagine what that could do! Clean energy for the whole country, plus exports, plus global leadership in a brand new industry. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing, and there are some challenges on the way. First, there's marine life. Any large ocean project needs to be careful about how it affects whales, dolphins, fish, and seabirds. That's why scientists are studying marine baseline in the early planning stages to map out the local ecosystem and avoid any harm to it. They've already started this process in the Taranaki Bight and are gathering information so turbines can be placed where they'll do the least damage. There's also a high cost. Offshore wind is more expensive than onshore right now, but costs are dropping as the tech improves and scales up. Plus, the long-term benefits, cleaner air, local jobs, energy security, make it worth it. And then there are potential problems with authorities, local tribes, iwi, and the community. They all must support the project for it to become a reality, and it's not always working out. For example, when a 34-page review article about the risks of the wind farms for the environment came out, local authorities were reviewing it. But if everything goes well, construction in the South Taranaki Bight could begin in the late 2020s. Iceland is a great example of a country where green, renewable energy works and rules. 9 out of 10 homes in this country stay warm thanks to underground geothermal heat. Thanks to its wild geology with volcanoes, hot springs, and glaciers, Iceland is packed with natural energy. It sits right on a super active part of the Earth's crust, where 2 tectonic plates meet. That's why it has so much geothermal power and hot water just bubbles up from below. Glaciers cover 11% of the country, and when they melt in the warmer months, they feed rivers that flow down from the mountains. That water's energy is turned into hydropower. Plus, Iceland also has lots of wind power potential. They just haven't tapped into it much yet. The only major thing still using fossil fuels in Iceland is transport, like cars and planes. But it wasn't always this way. Not long ago, Iceland relied mostly on imported oil and coal, especially before the 1970s. Back then, they mostly used geothermal energy for bathing and washing clothes. The change came when oil prices went up like crazy, and Iceland realized importing fuel was just too risky and expensive. The country needed its own stable, affordable energy. One farmer figured out how to use natural hot water to heat his home. Local communities followed his lead, and soon towns were drilling deeper underground to get even hotter water. That hot water then went through pipes around neighborhoods and heated entire towns. It worked so well that the authorities set up a special fund to give out loans for geothermal drilling. Others started building small hydro plants. By 1950, Iceland had over 500 tiny hydropower stations powering farms and villages. Later, the authorities stepped in again to attract big international companies. If Iceland could offer cheap green power, maybe new industries would move in, create jobs, and help grow the economy. That plan worked, and it also helped build a country-wide power grid. And it was all possible, not just because Iceland has amazing natural resources, but also thanks to teamwork of the authorities and regular citizens. A lot of countries today face the same problems. Nepal, for example, has tons of hydropower potential, but needs investment. Countries in East Africa have loads of underground geothermal energy, but not enough training or tech to use it. Iceland has been sharing what they know for decades. Since 1979, over 1,000 people from other countries have gone there to study geothermal energy. Icelandic companies have helped build geothermal systems in more than 50 countries, including the world's biggest one in China, which now heats homes for over 1 million people. And you don't even need volcanoes to use geothermal energy. New technology means you can use lower temperatures to heat and cool buildings. Paris, for example, has one of Europe's largest geothermal heating systems. Around 25% of Europeans live in places where this tech could work. Some places don't look important until the world realizes they hold the keys to the future. That's the case with Canada's Arctic. For most of history, it was just ice, snow, rocks, caribou, and even more ice. But now, it's about to become one of the most important places on Earth, and maybe make Canada a global superpower. Why? Because it's hiding minerals that power electric vehicles, satellites, and missile systems, while the demand is skyrocketing. However, it's not just mining and having resources, it's also about control. Right now, China has a massive head start because it refines over 90% of the world's rare earths. That means if you want to launch a satellite, manufacture advanced electronics, or even just keep the lights on in your fancy smart home, odds are you're relying on China. And that makes a lot of world powers very nervous. Because when everything's going electric, the last thing you need is being dependent on your geopolitical rival. So now, the global clean tech treasure hunt is officially on. The US, Europe, Japan, Australia, they're all competing. However, the latest technology and untapped potential might give Canada the upper hand. Canada's had these minerals for decades, but with low prices, tough terrain, and no global rush, they mostly stayed untouched. However, Ottawa is finally stepping up its game. Back in 2022, Canada rolled out the Critical Minerals Strategy with billions in funding and tax perks to get companies digging. There's also plans to build the necessary roads, ports, and power lines to tap into those remote deposits up north. Canada already produces more than 60 minerals and metals, but 31 of them are now considered critical. 6 of those are having VIP treatment: lithium, graphite, nickel, cobalt, copper, and rare earth elements. But digging it up is just step 1. The real plan? Keep it local. Melt that frozen treasure into shiny new batteries right at home. That means not just mines, but also refineries, processing centers, and high-tech factories popping up where there used to be nothing but snowdrifts and silence. While others are talking, Canada's busy paving roads and stringing power lines. Slowly but surely, they're turning snowfields into a high-tech playground. Getting to all that buried treasure used to be nearly impossible. After all, we're talking about land so remote that roads literally stop hundreds of miles too early. The ground is frozen solid for most of the year. And even if you found something valuable, just getting out was a logistical nightmare. So what changed? Canada has an ace up its sleeve. Don't know about you, but I use it mainly for making memes and music. But geologists? They're scanning the Arctic like it's Minecraft with X-ray vision. Instead of drilling blind, they're using decades-old core samples, plugging them into AI, and getting shockingly accurate predictions about what's underground. It's like upgrading from a pirate's treasure map to a GPS that actually says, "Dig here." Companies like Geologic AI and Cobalt Metals are already doing this, pouring data into AI and getting X marks the spot hits for nickel, cobalt, and rare earths. In the Northwest Territories, Canada is running a pilot lab that uses AI and digital scanning to reanalyze decades-old rock samples. The goal is to spot hidden mineral deposits that old methods might have missed without digging a single new hole. All that sounds great, but maybe I made it sound simpler than it is. Digging up the Arctic is a logistical nightmare. For starters, this isn't just a remote patch of land. The Canadian Arctic is huge. Almost half the country, stretching over Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. We're talking about a region larger than India, with fewer people than a small city. Most of it is permafrost, wilderness, or ice-covered islands scattered across the Arctic archipelago. Temperatures go from barely 50 degrees Fahrenheit during summer to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, with ground that stays frozen for most of the year. Fun fact, did you know that negative 40 degrees happens to be the same as negative 40 degrees Celsius? It's the one temperature where both scales intersect. They climb at different rates, but eventually cross paths when it gets cold enough. Just a small trivia nugget for weather nerds like me. Anyways, you can't just roll in a truck and break ground in the Arctic. Up there, roads just stop. Want to build something? It can take years, and one nasty winter can put everything on ice. And if you want to continue up north, you need more of everything. More food, more fuel, more machines, which means even more money. Speaking of money, another chilling fact is how much this all costs. Mining in the far north is way more expensive than doing it in, say, Australia or Chile. An AI might tell you where the minerals are, but people and big machines still have to dig, and that costs a fortune. But that's not all. Most of the Canadian North is Indigenous land. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities have lived there for thousands of years, and mineral hotspots often sit right on their ancestral grounds. So when Canada talks about unlocking the Arctic, it's not just a question of roads and robots. It's a question of partnership and collaboration. And that's not optional. Legally, projects on Indigenous land require consultation and, in many cases, consent. The good news, some communities aren't just involved, they're leading the way. In regions like Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, Indigenous-owned corporations and world powers are already shaping how development happens on their terms. If Canada wants to pull this off, it's going to need more than tech and funding. It's going to need trust. So with all that in mind, can Canada pull this off? Honestly? With technological advancements and partnerships, it doesn't seem impossible. But Canada isn't just doing one thing right. It's doing a bunch of things at the same time. Let's recap. Hidden resources? Checked. New strategy? In place. Big funding? Approved. AI tools? Deployed. Indigenous partnerships? Underway. Infrastructure? Already breaking ground. It's a snowball turning into an avalanche. Exploration boosts investment. Investment speeds up roads. Roads unlock more deposits. More deposits attract more factories. It's a feedback loop, and if they keep feeding it, the whole Arctic operation could go from an idea to empire faster than anyone expects, giving a whole new meaning to the phrase frozen assets. But this doesn't just help Canada. It could save the US a whole lot of trouble. If all goes to plan, the US won't need to ship rare earths halfway across the planet. It can just look north, wave at the caribou, and get what it needs from its closest neighbor. That's why the US has publicly backed the effort, offering support and funding to help build a trusted North American supply chain. For Canada, this could be the moment it stops being just a supplier of raw materials and starts becoming a critical power broker in the clean tech economy. For the US, it's like discovering your neighbor has been secretly building a battery factory in their backyard while you were building electric vehicles. And globally? Well, the abundance of resources tends to lower the prices, and that's always a good thing for us regular people. Cheaper cobalt, nickel, and lithium mean cheaper batteries, and cheaper batteries mean more affordable electric vehicles, energy storage, phones, laptops, the works. Now, don't get too excited just yet. Like we said, mining in the Arctic isn't cheap, but in theory, once Canada's clean tech engine is fully up and humming, more supply and shorter supply chains should gradually bring costs down. And it's not just about price tags, it's about stability. Right now, if one country cuts exports or gets caught in politics, everything down the line gets shaky. But with Canada stepping in as a reliable supplier, the global system might get a bit more breathing room. Manufacturers can stop sweating over single points of failure and start building with confidence. In 1969, two brothers went fishing on the Altamaha River in the Clark's Bluff area. They cast their fishing rods, ready to wait for some fish to bite their bait, but at that moment, they saw something strange. At first, they thought it was a sturgeon, but then they saw that the length of this sturgeon was about 13 feet, almost as tall as two basketball players. Of course, such a size didn't frighten the brothers because some species of sturgeon, even today, they met Altamaha. This is a famous and narrow circles monster that lives near the mouth of the Altamaha River in southeastern Georgia. People from the Lower Muskogee Creek tribe talked about it long before the British colonization. In ancient times, there were legends about a snake-like lizard that bellowed and hissed. So this monster has already been elusive for several centuries. But do you know what distinguishes Altamaha from Nessie, Chupacabra, and others? Yes, there are no bad quality photos or videos of Altamaha, but there's a huge amount of evidence from different periods. For the locals, Altamaha is so real that one artist created a detailed statue of this river beast. Of course, it's not accurate because it's based on eyewitness accounts. But you'll probably agree that it would be scary to see such a cute animal in the middle of the river while fishing. Almost all the stories are about a creature without hind limbs, but with front flippers, which swims like a dolphin, has a crocodile face, big eyes, and large, sharp teeth. It's gray or green with a whitish yellow belly and a bony crest on its crown. And most interestingly, people have seen this creature in different sizes. Of course, when you see an unknown dinosaur-like thing, you can exaggerate its size or estimate it incorrectly, which explains the difference in statements. But there's also a probability that Georgia is home to a big family of Altamaha. One of the first people to see this creature and report it to a local newspaper was Captain Delano. On his schooner Eagle, he was sailing near St. Simon's Island, below the mouth of the Altamaha River, when he saw a creature about 70 feet long, which is almost twice the size of a school bus. Its body was like a barrel, and its head was like that of an alligator. It's possible that the captain greatly exaggerated the size of the monster because of the excitement, but several other people who were with him in the boat confirmed his words. From that moment on, reports of the river monster began to appear more often. Someone saw it flashing along the river. Others saw how it behaved defensively towards people. And some people reported that Altamaha was just basking in the sun. Just imagine its displeasure. Not only fishers met Altamaha. In the 20s of the last century, lumberjacks were crossing the river and saw a huge snake-like monster. In 1935, a group of hunters saw a creature they called a giant snake. In the 1940s, Boy Scouts encountered a similar creature. And in the 1950s, 2 employees from Reedsville State Prison saw it. For so many years, people have been meeting it, and no one has ever managed to catch the monster. Perhaps it's smarter than it looks and always very careful. Maybe people are afraid to touch it. Perhaps they consider it a national treasure and protect it. But one day, there was a case when Altamaha almost fell into a trap. In the summer of 1980, 2 men saw a monster wallowing on a muddy shore. It seemed like it was stuck and trying to get out. The witnesses said that the rough, dark-skinned creature had finally left the shore, dived into the water, and disappeared. Later that year, another man said he had seen something similar. A snake-like large creature with 2 brown humps protruding from the water. It dived into the water and churned the surface, like a boat while moving. Other witnesses catching crabs described Altamaha as the largest eel in the world. Okay, stop! Many saw it in the last century, but what about more recent news? Is the monster still alive? Oh yeah. In 2002, a man was pulling a boat upriver near the town of Brunswick when he noticed something large, 20 feet long and about 6.5 feet wide, breaking out of the water. In 2010, a photographer caught something strange on camera floating along a canal in the city of Darien. And these cases are just the ones we know about. Surely, many people have seen this thing but haven't talked about it in newspapers or on the internet. If you don't believe these stories, you can go to Darien, get on a boat, and ride along the river to see this monster with your own eyes. Yes, according to reports, this creature always tries to avoid people. It's very cautious, but all the same, you should not get too close to this water lizard twice the size of a school bus. Go to the Museum of Darien to take a photo of the Altamaha statue. There are also souvenirs with the image of this monster. But let's assume that you or someone else managed not only to take a clear photo of the Altamaha, but also catch it. What is the next course of action? What are you going to tell the world, and how will the world react to it? What will happen to the poor animal, surrounded by millions of flashes from reporters' cameras? Will people make a show out of it or send it to a lab? Fortunately, in 2001, scientists already developed an action plan. This plan was drawn up by Scotland's nature agency, NatureScot, since they had concerns about the Loch Ness Monster. At some point, it became too popular and too many people tried to catch it, so the agency became concerned about saving the life of the famous creature. They showed the Nessie contingency plan that can also be used for any unknown animal that lives in water or on land. According to the plan, if the ancient lizard is captured, scientists should take its DNA sample and just release it back into the wild. Fair enough. The animal will receive the same legal protection as other local wildlife in Scotland. All attempts to catch it will be prohibited. But let's imagine that this is exactly what happens. Scientists receive a DNA sample of the Altamaha, the Loch Ness Monster, or other similar creatures. What could those be? Some ancient descendants of dinosaurs? For example, the plesiosaur looks like a distant relative of these monsters. It's huge and has a long neck and a toothy mouth. What if it managed to survive and reach the Altamaha River? Or it may be a completely new, unknown species that lives in deep freshwater. Some people who saw Altamaha said that it had produced a hissing sound. What if it's some kind of ancient python or anaconda that moved from land to water and grew fins? In any case, it should not be ruled out that it may be some kind of eel or sturgeon. One day, someone saw it, was impressed, and told other people about it with great exaggeration. Everyone believed it and started spreading the story. What do you think?
In 1994, the Sherman family bought a small ranch in the state of Utah, 150 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. A spacious house, beautiful nature, a starry sky. One night, Terry Sherman heard a strange noise coming from the outside. He went out of the house and saw a huge wolf. He had never seen a wolf of this size. Terry chased the animal away and ran after it, but the wolf's tracks were lost. It was as if it had disappeared into thin air. This was just one of the many creepy and strange cases that occurred at Skinwalker Ranch. The land where the farm is located used to be inhabited by the Ute people. In the past, they clashed with the Navajo, who, according to legend, sent skinwalkers on them. According to locals, a skinwalker is an evil witch who can take the form of any animal or human. There are rumors that skinwalkers still wander in this area. Perhaps the Sherman family saw one of them, but it's not that important. The fact is that the appearance of the huge wolf was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, the family reported strange flashes of light, mysterious objects in the sky, crop circles, and mysterious voices that seemed to hover overhead. But the worst thing was the damage to livestock. The Sherman family, fortunately, acted contrary to all the cliches of horror movies. In 1996, they sold the cottage to Robert Bigelow, a man who had a lot of money and was interested in buying this particular ranch. But why? Because Robert Bigelow was a fan of strange, unusual phenomena. He founded the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDSI, and the area where Skinwalker Ranch is located had been the center of attraction for creepy things. Since the 1950s, there have been hundreds of reports of mysterious objects in the sky in this region. And no, those are not your typical round flying saucers. People talked about different bright lights that took the form of doorways or portals. So, Robert Bigelow and his NIDSI reported on glowing figures and animal diseases. But over the years of research, they could not provide any reliable evidence of the existence of something extraordinary. People saw all those strange phenomena, but their equipment didn't catch anything. So it all looked like a big hoax. But in 2016, something interesting happened. Skinwalker Ranch was sold to an anonymous buyer. 4 years later, the new owner did something no one had done before. Now imagine how cool it would be if all the strange phenomena were recorded not on old video cameras with poor quality, but on cool equipment with high-resolution video recording, powerful microphones, thermal imagers, and sensors. And what if you could also watch a live broadcast using this equipment? Well, that's exactly what the new rancher did. His name is Brandon Fugel, a real estate mogul from Utah. He not only bought the ranch, but also signed a contract with the History Channel to create a show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. The point of this project is to apply a scientific approach to unexplained phenomena. To do this, he turned the ranch into a big reality show that's been running for 5 years. The first thing Brandon Fugel stated was that there would be no falsifications, fakes, or computer graphics. No show exploring strange phenomena can compare with this one in terms of realism and authenticity. Fugel uses thermographic imaging systems, plane transponder data receivers, magnetometers, special cameras that detect infrared radiation and convert it to images, and other complicated scientific equipment. He shares all the data with the audience and allows the most devoted fans of the show to monitor 50 cameras with microphones installed throughout the territory live at any moment. For money, of course. Membership in the Skinwalker Ranch Insiders program starts at $8 per month. During the entire existence of the show, more than 10,000 people have signed up. Participants can not only watch the ranch through cameras, but also rotate them and zoom in and out. In addition to cameras and thermal imagers, Fugel launched special lasers into the sky that reflect off any surface. If the sky is clear, the lasers go far up. If there's an object, the lasers reflect off it. In one of the episodes, they used this equipment to detect something flying and invisible. Fugel also said that he had seen strange flying objects with his own eyes. Skinwalker Ranch turned out to be a real twilight zone for him. Now one day, the camera footage showed one of the doors slam shut. Just like that, without any wind. Other terrible phenomena are connected with livestock. Animals often get hurt, and many of them simply don't survive. And there are loads of such strange, unexplained cases. Each episode of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch is dedicated to a phenomenon and its exploration. But has expensive equipment helped to unravel any secrets or prove the existence of extraterrestrial or mystical forces? If this had been confirmed, the whole world would probably already know about it. Therefore, at the moment, it's just an interesting show for fans of mysterious phenomena. There's no direct evidence of the existence of anything unusual there. But, at the same time, there's no explanation for many creepy things. The show offers a huge scope for speculation and research. Local folklore, flying objects, strange voices, not unlike mine, and many unexplained phenomena are all in one place. If all these stories are true, why are they happening exactly in this area? There are a lot of theories, but let's look at a few of the most popular ones. The first and most obvious one. Imagine that you have a popular show that makes you money. People watch it only because it shows mysterious, inexplicable things. But what if there's an explanation? In this case, the popularity of the show will drop and you'll lose money. It's logical, but why would a real estate mogul with a fortune of several $billion deceive people? Besides, if you watch some episodes, you'll see that Fugel is truly passionate about this project. One of the most popular theories is about visitors from other planets. After all, we have glowing flying objects, bright lights in the sky, electrical interferences, and the ability to elude camera lenses. Also, some believe that an unknown object is hidden in the mountain, located next to the ranch. What if it's a spaceship that crashed there millions of years ago and was swallowed by the mountain? It may be emitting bizarre radiation that drives animals crazy and causes hallucinations in humans. A popular, but a rather banal version. Let's move on. The next theory is similar to the previous one, but instead of guests from another planet, it speaks about guests from another dimension. Ooh. Meet the multiverse version. Some unknown creatures from another reality come here, explore this ranch, and leave. This theory explains why some flying objects in the sky look like portals. Those portals may cause malfunctions in electrical appliances. There's one weak point in this theory. Why do these portals appear on the lonely ranch and nowhere else? A strange choice of travel for the residents of other dimensions. Now, the most likely theory belongs to a neuroscientist who claims that all the oddities on the ranch are connected to the geophysical force of the planet. Seismic activity, geomagnetic fields, and shifts in tectonic plates can affect some parts of the human brain responsible for hallucinations. Electromagnetic forces can also affect the stable operation of electrical appliances. So, perhaps all the oddities of this place are the result of increased seismic activity. Glowing lights, giant wolves that leave no footprints, and voices in the air can be a massive hallucination. But if this is true, why doesn't anything similar happen in other places with seismic activity? This idea leads to another theory related to electromagnetic interference. This phenomenon incapacitates batteries, drones, microphones, video cameras, and other equipment. Perhaps it affects the human brain too. But what about those poor affected animals? There are still too many unanswered questions, so stay tuned.
Hey, check this out. Does this pebble look like a face to you? Especially with that red dot in the middle. If yes, you might be staring at the world's first emoji. It was uncovered in Spain and it's 43,000 years old. And that red spot was made by a Neanderthal with a finger. That means this isn't just a dot, it's the oldest fingerprint ever found. But was this really a nose on a grumpy face? And why is that important? Because it hints at something big. A mind seeing shapes, then choosing to add meaning. The palm-sized rock was discovered in a Paleolithic rock shelter tucked away under some light-colored chalky cliffs. It was pretty much a natural overhang where Neanderthals used to hang out. They called it home tens of thousands of years ago. As for the pebble, to me, the dot seems like a random ketchup stain from ages ago. But real archaeologists know better. The neat placement instantly caught their attention. After running tests, they determined that the stain wasn't natural. It seems intentional, not random. Their guess? Someone thousands of years ago may have dipped a fingertip into a mix of ochre pigment and water, then pressed it onto the stone, leaving a tiny prehistoric stamp. To put that theory to the test, they called forensic experts from Spain's national police. At first, the specialists were pretty doubtful. After all, this was the ultimate definition of a cold case. But with multispectral imaging, which lets scientists study surfaces under different wavelengths of light, something amazing popped up: clear fingerprint ridges. The print's rounded form showed it came from the tip of a finger. Comparing it with fingerprint databases, the evidence pointed to one likely candidate: an adult male, not a woman or a child. Finding any fingerprint this old is insanely rare. Pigments usually fade, rocks erode, and time wipes away delicate details like ridges. When it comes to fingerprints, the unique patterns actually form before you're even born. During pregnancy, they never change. You might wonder, could a clever criminal damage their skin to erase their fingerprints and fool the cops? Turns out that's basically impossible. Fingerprints aren't just on the surface. They form deep in the skin, in a layer called the dermis. Even if you burn, cut, or scar the outer layer, the patterns underneath usually stay the same and even heal back. Scars might distort the print a little, but that won't help. Ironically, those scars often become a new kind of fingerprint, unique to the person. With today's forensic tools, even a partial print is enough. Not to mention the DNA. Yes, fingerprints are just patterns, but they usually come with sweat, skin cells, or oils that may contain DNA. Here's another cool fact. Koalas also have unique fingerprints just like we do. Under a microscope, even experts sometimes struggle to tell them apart from human prints. Scientists think these ridges help koalas grip branches and pick leaves with precision. The bottom line, fingerprints are basically nature's unhackable signature. It's something humans, Neanderthals, and apparently even koalas have been leaving behind for tens of thousands of years. If it's been a while since your biology classes, here are some clarifications. Neanderthals weren't our direct ancestors, they're more like our long-lost cousins. Colloquially, we call them humans too. But for scientists, Neanderthals and modern humans were different species within the same genus. Kind of like how lions and tigers are both big cats, but they're not the same species. Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis split from a common ancestor hundreds of thousands of years ago. Neanderthals dominated Ice Age Europe. When Homo sapiens arrived around 45,000 years ago, the two met, mixed, and today, most people outside Africa carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Eventually, the balance shifted. Within just a few thousand years, Neanderthals disappeared, while modern humans kept spreading. Scientists think it was a mix of different factors. Shifting climates made food scarce, new neighbors brought competition, and their small, scattered populations just made survival even tougher. Now, here's why this little fingerprint is such a big deal. For decades, scientists thought Neanderthals were just built for survival. Strong, but simple. Homo sapiens were supposed to be the creative ones. For a long time, scientists thought they were special because they could think in symbols. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors carved patterns into stones, painted animals on cave walls, and wore beads and pigments as decoration. The earliest proof of symbolic art comes from Blombos Cave in South Africa, where humans etched deliberate designs on pieces of red ochre over 70,000 years ago. Those symbols had no survival purpose. Researchers believe they were expressions of ideas, identity, and meaning. That ability to imagine and represent things we couldn't see was thought to be uniquely human. But this one tiny red dot on a stone challenges that idea. See, the stone already looked like a face, and someone all the way back deliberately pressed a red nose right where it should be. That's symbolic thinking. That could mean that Neanderthals weren't just making tools and hunting mammoths. Perhaps they were able to imagine things. And this isn't just the only clue. This fingerprint is part of a growing pattern that shows Neanderthals were way more like us than we ever believed. For example, in Cova Negra, Spain, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal child who had a serious ear condition that made life incredibly hard. However, the little one lived to be around 6 years old. Now, remember, this was the Ice Age. Just managing on your own was challenging. Survival was tough. Food was scarce and danger was everywhere. Yet, someone made sure that the child was looked after, fed, and kept safe. Scientists believe that this shows a trait of compassion, something we once believed only our species was capable of. In Iraq, scientists found a Neanderthal skeleton sprinkled with flower pollen. Sounds random. Maybe not. Some believe it was part of a funeral ritual, like the world's first floral tribute. If that's true, Neanderthals weren't just surviving, they were remembering and honoring life. Neanderthals were apparently quite resourceful. Around 176,000 years ago, they were stacking stalagmites into neat circles in Bruniquel Cave in France. Was this some kind of ritual or just curiosity? Maybe this means that they had the idea of planning and changing their surroundings. Then, around 130,000 years ago, they took eagle talons and turned them into jewelry in Croatia. Yep, early bling. This suggests they were into looking good and possibly showing off a bit socially. There were no sewing machines back then, but Neanderthals had stone scrapers and even bone needles. With those, they crafted animal skin outfits that were perfect for the freezing Ice Age climate. When you step back and consider all of these, that tiny red fingerprint isn't just a mark on stone. If it was meant to represent a nose, it's part of a much bigger story. Neanderthals cared for one another, crafted tools and clothing, created jewelry, painted on cave walls, and built mysterious structures deep in caves. Basically, they were thinking a lot more like us than we used to imagine. And here's the fun part. What if that little red dot wasn't meant to be a nose at all? Maybe it was a joke, a charm, or just a doodle. Heck, it could have been the first face meme scratched onto rock. Whatever it was, unless it really was an accident, it shows imagination. So the next time you send an emoji, remember that Neanderthals had the same idea. Personally, I like that it's a grumpy one, but at the very least, we now have the oldest fingerprint ever discovered. That alone is extraordinary, but add the fact that the print was placed right on a stone that already resembled a face, and suddenly, the questions multiply. Let's hope the researchers discover more about it so we can know for sure. What we do know is that 43,000 years ago, a Neanderthal pressed a finger onto stone and left us with one of the most personal signatures in prehistory.
Ooh, lava explosions, dramatic collapses, entire waterfall disappearing. Hey, what's going on? Well, iconic landmarks disappear for all sorts of reasons. Guaira Falls, for example, used to be one of the loudest, most powerful waterfalls on the planet, more than 3 times the volume of Niagara Falls in New York. It was located on the border between Brazil and Paraguay and had this insane flow of 3.5 million gallons of water per second. But in the 1970s, the authorities of both countries decided to build the Itaipu Dam, which now supplies a large amount of electricity to Brazil. Renewable energy is great, but it became possible at the cost of one of Earth's greatest natural wonders. The Guaira Falls became covered by the rising water from the reservoir and disappeared for good. Hundreds of people gathered to say their goodbyes and held a proper local ritual of remembrance for the deceased in the memory of the falls. So next up, we have a Game of Thrones favorite, the Azure Window in Malta. This gorgeous limestone jutted out into the Mediterranean as early as the 19th century. It was born thanks to the sea erosion of a limestone cliff face. Between the 1980s and the 2000s, parts of the top slab of the arch already collapsed, and fishers wouldn't come close to it in their boats. But it didn't stop the tourists, who would still walk across the top, even though everyone knew the arch was eroding fast. In March 2017, during a heavy storm, the whole thing collapsed into the sea. Just like that, a 92-foot masterpiece of nature crumbled in seconds. Now, no one was hurt, but the island of Gozo lost its most famous landmark forever. Now, only underwater divers can admire the ruins. Our next destination, the pink and white terraces of New Zealand, were natural staircases that formed thanks to mineral-rich water pouring down volcanic rock. Once the water hit the cooler air, those minerals hardened really fast, kind of like how sugar turns into rock candy when it cools. That same process is still happening today in places like Yellowstone, with all those steaming geysers and colorful but deadly hot pools. At the White Terraces, boiling hot water full of silica bubbled out of a crater about 100 feet above a lake. It flowed down over around 50 huge curved steps. Across the lake, the pink terraces were a little smaller, but still amazing. Their colors probably came from different minerals in the water or even tiny microbes living there that added some flair. You could soak in the terraces like hot tubs, but make it 19th century and magical. Then, in 1886, Mount Tarawea erupted. Ash, lava, earthquakes, and the terraces vanished, either buried under layers of ash or sunk to the bottom of Lake Rotomahana. Yeah, I got that right. Meanwhile, for over a century, people thought they were gone forever. But in 2011, someone said they found parts of the terraces under the lake. So maybe they're not entirely gone, but just hiding. Peekaboo. If you've seen The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio, you definitely know this place, Maya Bay on Phi Phi Lay Island in Thailand. After that movie dropped in 2000, the place went viral. Before viral was even a thing. Soon, thousands of tourists arrived every day with speedboats, sunscreen, plastic trash, all that sort of stuff, which wrecked the coral reef. And in 2018, Thai authorities decided it was time to shut the bay down. After a 4-year recovery, Maya Bay reopened in 2022, but with big-time restrictions. Boats can't come directly in, swimming is limited, and the number of tourists is capped daily. Plus, they now close the idyllic location during the less popular rainy season to let the natural resources and ecosystems recover. So yeah, it's technically back, but the wild original version of Maya Bay is gone for good. Meanwhile, once upon a time, there was a giant cliff face in New Hampshire, which looked exactly like an old man's profile. See? There was a jaw, forehead, and even a nose. That was called the young woman on the porch. No, not really. It was the old man of the mountain, made of granite ledges perched on Cannon Mountain in Franconia Notch. With some severe freezing and thawing after the retreat of glaciers 12,000 years ago, the rock took the shape of that face, 40 feet tall and 25 feet wide. People first wrote about it in the early 1800s, and it became a symbol of New Hampshire. It even appears on license plates and the state quarter. But even with all that public love and many attempts to patch the cracks with steel rods, cement, and chains, the face couldn't last forever. Sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. on May 3, 2003, it collapsed and was gone forever. A geologic facelift, I would call it. Today, you can visit Profiler Plaza and see the recreation of the profile on the cliff across from Profile Lake. Now, the most isolated tree in the world stood alone in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Niger. The tree of Tenere was literally the only tree for 250 miles in any direction. For centuries, nomads used it as a natural compass that helped them cross the harsh desert. Its roots stretched unbelievably deep to reach underground water, and it was staying alive in a place where nothing else could grow. The lonely tree survived desert heat, wind, and droughts for centuries, until a truck driver knocked it down in 1973. Yep, the dunderhead managed to hit the only standing thing in the middle of nothing. Perhaps the driver thought the tree was jaywalking or something. Anyway, you can now see some twisted remains of the tree in a museum, and a metal sculpture stands in its original place. Now, another tree, this time not lonely at all, stood as tall as a 23-story building in Yosemite National Park. You see, at the end of the 19th century, two men managed to cut a tunnel right through the 26-foot base of this giant sequoia. It was all part of a campaign to promote automobile tourism and bring more visitors to the park. And it worked! The Wawona Tunnel Tree became a real tourist magnet. I mean, who wouldn't want to have their photo taken in a car driving through a big tree? But sadly, this beauty fell in 1969 under a heavy load of snow. It was around 2,300 years old at that time. You can still see it in the same spot where it fell. Look up the fallen tunnel tree. Now for a change, let's take a look at a couple of human-made landmarks. New York's current Penn Station does its job pretty well, but the original one was 10 leagues above it when it came to beauty. Built in the fancy Beaux Art style, it had massive domes, tall archways, and elegant columns. It used to welcome over 100 million travelers every year, especially in its heyday during the mid-1940s. But things changed. By the late 1950s, people were flying more and driving on the brand-new interstate highways, rather than by train. Then, in 1962, the city decided to build a new Penn Plaza and the Madison Square Garden Arena. Just 1 year later, they tore down the original Penn Station so they could squeeze a smaller version underground. The New York Times called it, quote, a monumental act of vandalism against one of the greatest landmarks of that elegant Roman-inspired era. Now, back on the Pacific coast, the Sutro Baths opened in San Francisco in 1896. It was a 3-acre glass building packed with 7 different swimming pools, all with different temperatures. It had springboards, high dives, water slides, and even trapezes dangling over the water. And it could handle serious crowds, up to 10,000 people at once. There was also a natural history museum with Egyptian mummies and a sculpture gallery filled with artifacts from Mexico and China. It was definitely a one-of-a-kind playground, but there was also one major problem. It cost a fortune to run. Even during the Great Depression, when the owners turned the pools into ice skating rinks to try to stay afloat, the place still didn't make enough money. The baths finally shut down in 1964, and 2 years later, a fire burned it to the ground. Oh well.